Hey, let's talk a little bit about the Niners for a second before the Super Bowl. What's it going to take for the 49ers to get to this? I mean, they were here a couple years ago. It feels like they're getting further away from the ultimate prize and not closer. You cover them intently like I do. What's this offseason going to have to include?
So 12 wins in 2025, and I had predicted them to win 11 games and make the playoffs, and they exceeded my expectations. And I think context is always important. They exceeded my expectations because going into the year, I had them slated to be a double-digit win team. I had them going to the playoffs. But if you told me that they lost Nick Bosa in Week 3, Fred Warner a couple weeks after that, Michael Williams after that, and suffered all those injuries on defense, Brock Purdy would miss 8 games, and the Niners' offensive line would still be suspect, and George Kittle would be out, and Kendrick Bourne for a stretch for Mac Jones, who filled in beautifully, would be the Niners' #1 wide receiver at times. I would have told you there's just no way that the Niners would have made the postseason. This wasn't their year, yet they do win those 12 games, and they win a playoff game, and it was really impressive what they did going to Philadelphia, knocking off the defending Super Bowl champions. And I know that with that win, a lot of people were getting that Cinderella buzz. Can they make this dream run to the Super Bowl? Can they play at Levi's Stadium on that quest for 6 and potentially finally bring home a Lombardi trophy? Then they get annihilated by the Seattle Seahawks. And this Seahawks team is really good. They have one of the youngest rosters in the NFL. I think John Schneider has done a terrific job of resetting, not completely rebuilding. He's crushed it in the draft over the last couple of years. They've had some good free agency signings. He's made some really marquee trades, and that's why Seattle is where they are. And I think at head coach, just being around Mike McDonald and the Seahawks over the last couple of days, he comes from military background. His dad was in the Army, I believe. That was the branch that he was in for a very long time. Runs a very tight ship. And I'm just so impressed with the ownership that he has over the entire team, how he's able to manage it. But this roster has a bunch of badasses on it. They're young, they're talented, they're deep, they're physical, they're fast. And Mike McDonald's only 38 years old. John Schneider is going to go down as one of the best GMs in NFL history. They're not going anywhere. So to your question, what can the Niners do to get to this point? I think it's a couple things that you and I have discussed. I think the Niners on offense have to get faster. They have to get more explosive. Right now, following the 2025 season, they were the oldest roster in the NFL on offense. That has to change. I think along the offensive line, they just have to get better, because if the Seahawks are going to be so stout on the defensive side of the ball, Kyle Shanahan can't just rely on out-scheming a bad offensive line. And so I think the Niners need to get better up front. I think on defense, they're in a pretty solid spot. Getting back Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Michael Williams is certainly going to help, but that pass rush, Larry, needs some juice. They were dead last in sacks last year, and I think that comes from the interior, the need, and at edge rusher. At linebacker, you need some ballers alongside Fred Warner. Do you need a corner too? What do the Niners think of Renardo Green? Can Raheem Morris get the best out of him? And then I like Malik Mustafa as a downhill safety, but I'd like the Niners to bring in a coverage safety. I think they've been missing that over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot on the to-do list for this offseason. It's not one or two things. It's like 10 things. What do you think of Raheem Morris? My only concern with Raheem Morris is that none of his defenses are ever really ranked really highly, but Shanahan likes him. That's a big key to it. He should be good with the defensive backfield. I think he's good at building culture. Hopefully he can be here for a few years. I like it. I don't know if I love it. What do you think of it?
I like it. Jim Schwartz was my #1 after Brian Flores went back to the Vikings. Raheem Morris was my #2, and then Gus Bradley, to me, was a distant third. And with Gus, I know the Niners really like continuity, and Gus did a really good job handling red zone duties, but his defenses, when he's been a DC over the last several years, we're not just talking recently, hasn't been that great. And I know over the last, I saw this stat, 12 years, he's had top 10 defenses 3 or 4 times. But a lot of those good defenses that he had, they were a long time ago. So I think the relationship between Kyle and Raheem matters. Kyle got arrested defending him at the Combine in 2005. They've known each other since the early 2000s. This is the 4th time that they're going to be on the same staff together. And one of the reasons why Steve Wilkes didn't work out, he's been quoted as saying this, Kyle likes to run his defense a certain way. And I think now Kyle and Raheem have this relationship where Raheem knows how Kyle wants the defense to be run. And with Raheem, I think he's a great communicator. I think he's a really good motivator. The biggest thing that I like about him, which is what I talked about in my instant reaction video when he was hired on Sunday, is that he's been adaptable. So in the early 2000s, he was from that school of the Tampa 2 defense, right? 4-3 front, 2 safeties, drop the middle linebacker back. And then as his career has progressed, I think he's done a really good job of adapting to the personnel on the roster. That's what Robert Saleh did such a great job of, I thought, in 2025. Okay, we have all these injuries. How can I adapt to the personnel and the players on this team and cater to their strengths? I think Morris has been able to do that, and he showed that in 2021 when he took over for Brandon Staley, who's a Vic Fangio disciple. Vic Fangio's always run that 3-4 kind of hybrid. Brandon Staley was running that too. So that was a different scheme that Raheem Morris wasn't necessarily accustomed to running, but he ran it successfully, and the Rams that year won a Super Bowl. And I really like what he did this past year with Jeff Ulbrich. That Falcons defense in 2024, Larry, it was terrible.
They were last in the NFL in sacks, yes. I believe.
Yeah, and I think they gave up the most touchdowns of any defensive unit in the NFL. Jeff Ulbrich, former Niner, Jeff Ulbrich with Robert Saleh and the Jets. Nobody's really been talking about this, but Jeff Ulbrich was also running the 4-3. Look at what James Pierce did in his rookie year. Look at the production that they got from a pass rushing standpoint. Raheem Morris, of course, had his fingerprints on that. So him being malleable and being able to adjust, I think, is important to the personnel, but also in season, in game. So I like the hiring a lot.
Do you think they keep their wide 9? I mean, he started with Tampa 2, then he was kind of a 34 front guy, or he was a 4-3 front guy with Quinn in Atlanta. Then he's a 34 front guy in LA. Then he goes this year to Atlanta, and they were kind of a hybrid. What do the Niners stay with the wide 9, or does this indicate they may be open-minded to maybe moving on from Kasarik and moving on from the wide 9?
Well, Kyle Shanahan hasn't really been willing to move off of the wide 9. And so I know that he's a great offensive coach, but I think to what Christian McCaffrey, I believe, said a couple of weeks ago, that when Kyle Shanahan holds these meetings for the team, like, one of the things that is so impressive about him is his understanding of the entire operation and both sides of the football. So he has a good pulse, of course, for offense, but I think it's underrated, his pulse for the defensive side of the ball. And he's talked about this before, which is why I also like the Jim Schwartz possibility when that was potentially possible, was when Kyle was a young coach in the early 2000s, looking at what Jim Schwartz did with some of those Titans defenses. How good Schwartz was with those defensive units was the reason why Kyle Shanahan was like, man, I'd really like for my teams to run the wide 9 whenever I can become a head coach. So he really likes Chris Kasarik. They've drafted to fit a 4-3 and to fit the wide 9. So I don't know if they're going to move off of that. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think so, at least as of right now.
I did a video earlier today about the 10 guys that could follow Raheem Morris to the Niners. They're not all 10 going to follow the Niners or follow Morris to the Niners, but it was like Arnold Ebiketie, it was Jalen Ramsey in Pittsburgh, it was Kobe Durant with the Rams, who was a free agent corner. Is there any one player that you've thought about that you think might follow Morris to San Francisco?
Oh, man. I think those are solid names, especially with the guys up front, because I think that with Raheem's familiarity and the Niners' need for pass rushing help at defensive end and at defensive tackle, I think that those players would play. So I think those are good possibilities right there.
David Onyemata was another one.
David Onyemata was the name I was going to mention.
Yeah, that's a good name. Give me a quick thought on Super Bowl 60. I mean, my nephew's a big Pats fan, so I'm going to root for the Pats. I think I'm trying to justify the Patriots beating Seattle. You know, Seattle is. We just got a really up-close look at Seattle, and they were really overpowering. But a couple things stand out to me. One, they've been at home. Two, they've been the more rested team the last couple weeks than the Rams or the Niners. The Niners were done after the Philly thing, and the Rams may have outplayed them for a good chunk of the game. So here's New England. New England's won 13 in a row or whatever it is. They're really good on defense. The Rams Blake Corum ran for 6-1 a carry. Now here come the Patriots. I could see them running it. I could see them getting a turnover or two, and I could see them beating New England. I think this is going to be beating Seattle. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I guess Seattle's the better team, but I'm rooting for New England. I kind of think it's going to be a mucky, ugly, not a perfect kind of game. And I think the Pats are going to be +2 on turnovers, and I'm taking them. But give me your breakdown of this game.
I'm really excited for this game. This is the first time since Bill Belichick took on Dan Quinn in the 2018 Super Bowl when the Patriots came back against the Falcons, or was it 2015, whatever it was, that we had two defensive-oriented head coaches. And I know that in this era of the Wonder Boy offensive minds with all these great young offensive play callers and this highlight reel era where people are always focused on betting and fantasy stats that everybody leans toward offense, I kind of like defensive-oriented games. And being around Mike McDonald, Mike Vrabel the last couple of days, they're very similar coaches, and obviously they're similar with their philosophies, but also on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm kind of with you. I think this could be more of a low-scoring type of game, a rugged, physical, defensive battle. But when it comes down to it, I just think Seattle has been playing better on both sides of the ball. I think they're a little bit more talented. I think they're deeper. And this is a Seattle team that over the last couple of months has just been rolling. The Patriots' schedule all year has been pretty easy, but I will give credit where credit is due, that in the playoffs, Drake May has fumbled. He's thrown some picks. I think he has 6 fumbles and 2 picks. But the Patriots have beaten 3 top 5 defenses during this playoff run. Chargers in the wild card round, Texans in the second round. I know you and I really love that Houston defense. And then in the AFC Championship game, they beat Denver. And so I think this Patriots offense is going to have to kind of carry a little bit, and they're going to have to play better than they have during this playoff run for them to get a chance. If they can establish the run, I think that'll be huge, which is hard to do against this really good Seahawks defense that is awesome against the run. But I just like Seattle. I just think that they've been rolling. I think right now they're looking and playing like a wagon. From top to bottom, I think the roster's a little bit better, and I just don't see a weakness with the Seahawks team. Usually you've been able to say Sam Darnold in big games, but Week 18 against the Niners, he was great. That 30-14 comeback against the Rams back on Thursday Night Football in December, he was bad to start and then awesome to end the game. And then in the divisional round against the Niners, he was flawless. In the NFC Championship game against the Rams, he was really good. So that had been a possible weak spot. With the way that he's been playing, though, with Clint Kubiak calling the plays and designing the offense and how multiple they are, running it and throwing it, I just really like the Seahawks in this game.
Good to see you, man. Appreciate all the stuff we do during the year, and great things. We wish you great things at Chat Sports for 2026.
Appreciate that. Subscribe to the Krug Show. Subscribe to the 49ers Report.
The czar of all that is Chat Sports coverage of the 49er Report, Chase Sr. He does a great job. All right, we got more straight ahead. It's Niners Nightly on the Sports Leader.